to Lombardy, just for an introduction to the population of what it is we do, who we are, what we can do. We've been overwhelmingly accepted on our residential and commercial signage, but there was an overwhelming demand for headstones, affordable headstones, which is an option in the Boulder Design franchise group. It's not something that we pursue. Alberta does well. We're the 5th franchise in Canada, the first in Eastern Ontario. There's roughly 150 in the US. We've been around for 20 years. Ontario, when it comes to headstones, is a bit different than other provinces, so I chose not to pursue it at that time. But because of the overwhelming demand, I'm going to initiate a discussion. Hopefully, the town of Prescott will be one of them, to see what the obstacles would be to providing headstones through these people that sell the headstones, but for the cemeteries. My understanding was historically, I call it an engineered product, but to keep it in simple terms, it is a cementitious product. It is made out of concrete. Historically, degradation of the wording has been an issue for concrete headstones. What we've looked at is, we've done it, a small version. We take a half-inch slab of granite and insert it. Because we actually make the rock, we can put anything on it or in it. And I've had some weird requests. A curler wanted a curling rock inserted into a stone, etc. So we can do that and etch the granite just like you would a granite headstone. The difference is quite substantial dollar-wise. A 2 foot by 3 foot granite headstone starts at $3,000 and works its way up from there. We're roughly around the $1,400 mark. A marker, we're under $500, close to like $400 for a marker. So it's cost effective and people seem to want it now. Before we offer it, I want to go and see what the obstacles are. So today my goal is simply to see if there's an interest from the Prescott Cemetery Board to designate one of your members for us to go through the process. When I have questions, I know that probably members of the Ontario Bereavement Association, or is that the industry, or it's something that I'm not knowledgeable enough in to be able to speak to potential clients about moving forward. So before we offer it, we want to be able to ensure that we can provide not only a quality and affordable product, but also the installation. And that brings me to the next issue we have, which is, according to your bylaws, going down 4.6 feet into the ground makes absolute sense. Get below the frost line. Just wondering if anybody's ever considered dropping a helical pile into the ground to disturb the area as least as possible. Both of these, the cementitious product and the helical products, are fairly new to the market, but the helical pile is approved for construction in Canada. So it is possible that we could install that and secure the headstone to the top of the helical pile. I'm sure you can't answer any of these questions right now, but I'm just giving you a bit of an idea of the direction that we're heading in. Before I ask you to have any questions, I made the smallest rock I ever have just so that I can get it in here and show you a bit of what our product is. Currently, our size is the maximum we can do is 5 feet by 6 feet, sitting on a concrete slab, so roughly 6 feet by 6 feet. And we can pin them together or put one on top of the other, or we could put LCD screens in them, or whatever you decide. But for today, at 75 pounds, I just brought you a tiny one. The product itself is warranted against crumbling and disintegration. The paint is not, but for our purpose here today, the front of this would be inserted with a half-inch piece of granite while we're making the product. And then on that, we would add whatever you would like for your deceased client. So as you can see, it looks like a rock through and through. I think my 10 minutes are up.
Okay.
Questions?
We have some questions?
How do you, like, I've seen on the website that, and actually I've seen you at some of the fairs. How do you mount it to, it looks like almost like a little bit of a base. How is it mounted?
This one here, anything up to 300 pounds, we insert a piece of PEX tubing inside. We have a piece of rebar, half-inch rebar that you can anchor it into your front lawn, or you can epoxy it to a concrete base.
Okay.
We can, that's unless you want to mechanically fasten, we can actually do that as part of the process as well. That's why if you've seen us at the fairs, you notice that we have a drink dispenser. It's about 125 pounds, so we didn't bring it, but it's functional. We want to be able to show that we could do a water fountain in your backyard or anything like that. But the smallest we could do was a drink dispenser. So you're limited by your imagination, to be honest.
So just to be clear, these photos are basically identification signs of properties or buildings. Are you selling those, or are you selling grade markers?
Yeah, I didn't understand the question. We do residential markers, do commercial signage. It's a bit of a gray area that we're going through at the moment. It seems there's some confusion in the bylaws if we're supposed to apply, for example, on the commercial signage. We would call Ministry of Transportation to ensure you're a certain distance from the road, et cetera, et cetera. If it's a residential one at the moment, they're considering it a landscape improvement, so we don't need. So because the product is new, we're kind of just going with the flow and trying to establish guidelines that we can bring to the next meeting. For example, whatever would come out of the Prescott meeting, I could take to a meeting in Morrisburg and say, this is what we found so far and the path that we're heading on. But Prescott being the closest to where I live in Johnstown and our business is in Cardinal, it's easier for us to be able, and we're also working with the town on other signage.
Okay.
So one of the questions, like with the Bereavement Authority of Ontario, are they the ones that, like, you know how you guys have your bylaws that say monuments have to be a minimum 6 inches thick of granite, 8 inches thick if they're above ground. So is it the Bereavement Authority of Ontario that actually states the minimum and maximum requirements for certain heights? Because then that gets into a completely different ballgame kind of thing. So I know that we can set bylaws that might be a little bit different from say another cemetery, because they'll have their set of bylaws, but from what I understand, the bylaws have to go through the Bereavement Authority of Ontario. So I don't know if they have an actual set of guidelines. What I've seen online is they have certain requirements. So will the Bereavement Authority of Ontario allow for something made of concrete above the ground, even though that there's a piece of granite inside it?
I'm pretty confident that they would allow, because it's pre-existing. Many of the cemeteries have it. I think they may, for example, you don't have it in your bylaws that we cannot have cementitious product in the cemetery. I didn't see it in there anyways, but there's size requirements, and that may be specific to each cemetery. The template seems to be one that came from the Bereavement Association, so everybody's using kind of the same principles, and then you have some leeway in there. I'm just more interested in finding out the reasons why not, so that we can address those. For example, the helical pile, moving forward, the cost of digging is just going to go higher and higher. Helical pile is fairly cost-effective way to come in and put it in. And they make them for all kinds of different products now. I'm probably the first, and this may not lead anywhere, but I'm not going to attempt to sell a product to somebody until I'm confident that it can also be professionally installed. And I've met with Arbor Memorial. They have 6 private cemeteries, and they made it quite clear from the get-go that the product would not enter their cemeteries. It's granite only. They also have, they get a percentage of the monuments that they sell. You get a commission. And that would hinder the concept of being affordable, but more importantly, I find it's a bit of a conflict. If I can make it for half the price, what is the incentive for them to sell and get a commission on half the value, right? Would you rather get 30% of 10,000 or 30% of 3,000? So I know that if you buy a plot at Arbor, it's about 15,000 by the time you get your marker in there, no headstone yet. So it's quite expensive. So anyways, the idea is to go through this process to be able to see if there is a way to have an affordable headstone. Somebody who simply can't pay, then they can go to, I know Prescott has a headstone manufacturer here, and I haven't approached any of them yet because
Yes, you
I'd
have.
be able to.
That would be me.
Before I approach them, I want to make sure that what I'm talking about makes sense, and that I have no problem with the manufacturer offering the client a cheaper alternative. I don't want to have 100 headstones in my front yard. I want to have three models. And you can't afford $3,000, we're going to help you out. Go see this company and they'll, right? And then we can do business together that way. And whatever we develop, we can duplicate across the board. But I can't go through the funeral homes because of they're historical. It's quite an old industry, right? So.
Right. Does your company clean them? Clean the
We have the capacity. Well, we could have the capacity. All of this is, like I said, to me, is driven by the client. So we know that the base is there, the client base is there. If we're in the cemetery installing our product, then yeah, we would clean. We have the capacity to acquire the laser equipment to clean headstones. So.
Okay. Matthew, did you have something to add?
So I think from a staff perspective, we'd be happy to reach out to the BAO, determine if there's any regulation around headstones, that sort of thing, and then bring that information back and work with the gentleman to just understand what regulations are out there and what aren't.
Good. All right.
And I was going to suggest too, that if you do want to stop by the office, come in and we can actually both kind of go through the information on the Bereavement Authority of Ontario as well. You know, if you were doing like reaching out to some of the monument places as to what your product is to broaden our thing as well. And then in working with cemeteries or whatever, but stop by the office and yeah.
Okay.
Right. The stone that you showed us, does that have the granite inset in it or not?
No.
The stone that you showed us there,
Yeah.
does it have the granite inset in it, or is that just,
We would insert it while we're making the stone.
but does that one have it?
No, this one doesn't.
Okay.
This is just a sample to have you understand the feel, the look, and the weight of the product, so that it's comparable to what's in the cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
But what we would do is when we make it, instead of, we're not so concerned with the stone anymore, we're more concerned with the half-inch slab of granite and the design that goes on it. It's a laser etchings. And then we would make the stone around the insert.
We do have cement in the cemetery. I've been working there this summer. I've found and I've seen cement in other cemeteries. Honestly, the one in ours that I saw is okay. The other one that I saw in another cemetery is not good at all, and it's really only a few decades old.
Yeah.
But it probably has to do with the quality of cement and the weather and whatnot. But I have seen these big stones in my travels. They look pretty good, you know, the large advertisements for, I can think of a car dealership for one that I saw in Florida, I think. But it's an interesting
There's a
concept.
We're working with the Lombardy Agricultural Society. They want a rock as a monument to past volunteers, so 5 feet by 6 feet. And that's what we're doing. We're inserting the engravable area. We will be inserting a piece of granite.
Good. Anything else? Nope. Thank you very much, Dennis, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you. Okay, we have to adopt the minutes from the June 22nd meeting. I have a recommendation that the Prescott Cemetery Board minutes dated June 22nd, 2023 be approved as presented. Elaine, you wanted to move that?
Yeah, please.
Trevor, seconded, all in favor? Good. Motion's carried. Item 6 is communications received from the BAO regarding pet internment. Is there any discussion on this item?
We have many people asking for it.
I know it's been an issue over the years, so has it not?
Through you, Chair, this is my first year, so I can't answer that. But no, I have not received any inquiries.
No? Okay.
And I haven't had anybody
No.
like that. The office, I get a lot of people getting pet markers, like from some of our scrap pieces out in the back or
Yeah.
whatever, that's just gonna go in their garden. But they've never inquired, hey, you know, is there a pet cemetery right here in Prescott?
Are there some at the back end of the cemetery now?
If there are, they're not supposed to be.
Oh, okay.
Right now, you can't bury a pet in a cemetery that's been designated for people.
Okay.
We would have to have a separate area because, I mean, it's very nice. I have a plot out there. Obviously, I'm not in right now, but I might like to be buried with a little man. But the thought is that the people who are already there and years in the past, their feelings about pets aren't the same as what ours are today. Today, a pet is more a member of the family. And in the day, a pet was something that you opened the door in the morning and it came back to get fed at night and it just kind of wandered around. But so people from years ago never intended their pets to be buried with them. And the thought that now allowing pets to be buried in amongst those would be against the wishes of those people. So it's a separate area that we would have to set up. And when we reformed the cemetery board in my first term after the churches turned it over, and Connie, when you were a funeral director, I think the churches were looking at the cemetery at that time.
Well, Bert Wormington, but basically he ran it.
Yeah.
So if I needed anything, talk to him.
Right. Well, anyway, we discussed this in my first term because we did have people asking about it. Fraser was chair of the board in those days, and knowing that we were going to talk about this, I actually stopped and talked to Fraser before the meeting. And they do have one in Brockville, the cemetery to the west of Brockville. I think, though, the strange thing there is that's actually in the neighboring township. Because I remember reading something in the paper there not too many months ago about them having to have a separate designated entrance for the pet cemetery, and they didn't. Brockville didn't see any problem with it, but the township's bylaws had to be altered or they had to do something with the, so Fraser, as luck would have it, has had two large dogs pass away last term, and I knew that he had done something in this regards. So I asked him what he had done, and he had had his first one cremated. And there is a pet cemetery in the Mauritown area somewhere.
On Lake Street.
In Lake Street? Okay. And that's where he took it. No, actually, well, he said there was two different ways that you could do it. You could have the dog cremated and its ashes spread, and that was so much money, and I think he said it was $185 or something like that. Or you could have the dog cremated, receive the ashes back in a wooden urn type box, which he said was very nice, and then do what you wanted with it, and that was around $400. The crematorium is in Renfrew, so it's highly unlikely that if your dog died, they're going to drive your dog to Renfrew and drive it back for $185. It's likely that a quantity go together, and God only knows whose ashes you're going to get back if you. Anyway, it's something that I think, quite frankly, would be a difference to people. But I agree with Fraser's comment that before we ever went ahead with it, it's a good idea to do a little advertising and get some public input on it, because there may be some folks who are dead against it that have lots currently in the cemetery.
Unintended.
Dead against it, yeah, I hadn't intended that. That was, thank you for picking up on that. I think it's worth looking into.
Yes, I agree.
Oh, one more thing. What he did say is the cemetery in Mauritown, there were a number of plaques in the ground. So presumably some people were actually burying their dogs. And then he said there was a wall with stones. I don't know whether they were, have you seen it, Donnie? Are they like flat
Yeah, they're just
stones
like a
with an
columbarium, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, but he said the last stone there, a date on it was 5 years ago, and the whole place kind of was decrepit looking, so he didn't know what was going on there lately. But it's the type of thing that if we did it, we would have to do it properly, and it would have to be properly maintained along with the rest of the cemetery. But I do think it's worth exploring.
All right. Can we get some more information on it? Rules and regulations?
I think you gotta apply, like you said, apply to the funeral board to have that placed as a cemetery thing and bury animals, and that's the only thing really.
The local veterinarian have anything to do with that?
Oh, they send dogs out to be, animals out to be cremated.
Yeah.
But who knows if you're getting back to proper cremation.
We had our pet cremated through the Prescott Veterinary Hospital, and actually ours is actually interred in the Rose Lawn, which is just outside of.
In Rose?
Was it Rose Lawn, the Rose Garden or whatever it is? It's right outside of Maitland.
Rose Lawn Memorial Gardens, yeah.
Yeah, so that they do have a pet cemetery there, and they do it as like a mass burial I think by month almost. So either your dog or your pet isn't named on any kind of stone, but I think the date is, so you know which date a mass cremation was put in, which could be an option as well.
Well, there are a lot of dogs and cats in town. I mean, I meet all kinds of them when I'm out walking, and as it stands right now, if your dog passes away, what do you do with it? You bury it in your own yard somewhere, or you do what Trevor did, or have it cremated and you never see it again. You know.
I do know of one person who has cremated his cat with the intention of putting it in his coffin when he goes.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something people do regularly?
Oh, yeah.
Do they? Okay.
Is it noted, like in the, no? Okay.
No.
Better to ask forgiveness and permission.
Yeah.
All right, I think we can move on. I think staff has picked up on the conversation. The entrance sign, you have a report for us, Caitlin? Recommendation
Sorry.
that,
I believe next 2023 operational summary.
this one, did I? Yes, I know.
7-1.
Ready to go to dinner. All right, the operation summary, is that the one we're talking about now? All right, thank you. Sorry about that, Caitlin.
Problem through you, Chair. So this was our first year taking on the administration of the cemetery. A thank you to Fraser Lashinder, who provided lots of guidance to all of us in the past couple of months. In this report, I noted the number of burials this year. I actually have a little typo. We have done 11. And then since the report, we have a couple more. So I've had a total of 14 burials this year. Also mentioned a couple of sales and the digitization of records. So that was a big focus early in the spring before we started the administration part. And we are all digital now, which is very helpful on my end. And we will keep utilizing that. And we utilize an internal software called CGIS, so that's helpful as well. The report also details looking into 2024 and some of the goals for the board, including a bylaw review, which would go through the registrar and the BAO for ultimate approval. And another point to note is the bank balance. So at the end of September, we had $16,300.68. And the municipality provided cemetery for grant of $14,000 for the year end. This is to ensure that 40% of the revenue for the board comes from a grant source so that they can receive an HST refund. Also, we had the audit performed, the annual audit, and no material items were found.
Good.
Matthew, is there going to, in your estimation, going to be a surplus by any chance? Not likely. Looks like there's going to be a significant deficit.
So we still have the 14,000 to add. So that kind of erases the deficit. And then I think we still had another month of care and maintenance, our maintenance, lawn maintenance, that sort of thing. So my guess is that we're going to be pretty even for the year, but Jessica probably has more information on that.
All right. I'll put it out here now. It's not exactly the time, but I was hoping that if we did have money to spend this year, that we could consider some type of hedge on the north end of the property.
Along the fence where.
Along the fence line?
Now.
Yeah.
The only trouble, if I may, the only trouble with hedges is the same problem that we have on the south end. Those were put in as small trees, I presume. And right now they are totally obscuring about 15 headstones that I'm gonna have to expose again. So hedges are great, but somebody's gonna look after them. And I tend to agree with your viewpoint that it's not so peaceful looking when you're looking at somebody's backyard with a dog barking at you and a shitty looking shed. But there is the looking after aspect, and the popular thing that people put in is cedar trees because they're not too expensive, but they do get out of hand, and that's what's happening on the south end. So I don't think I would want to see that happen unless there's something else that you can think of to
Burning
plant
bush.
that doesn't grow that high.
I would say that that's been like that. There's been just that wire fence there forever.
Yes.
And like you say, that hedge that was along the south side, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it just adds cost to the cemetery board to maintain it. Like it should be cut back or whatever. And back years ago, they'd cut it back because they had two guys that worked there all the time and they would cut it back. But you're better off just to leave it. If somebody doesn't want to see cemetery, they can put a fence up themselves. They're all good houses there, except for the very start at where they make the first jog.
I think it's all chain link fence.
Yes, it
Right
is.
through, right?
Yeah.
What about those, now, does the fencing belong to, is it us that installed it way back when? So is it our fence?
I think the cemetery had that installed.
Okay, so if that's the case, could you not look at the strip of like the
Agreed.
interweaving stuff that you would, that might make it a greenish look, but with the no maintenance in a sense?
That's gonna cost you big bucks.
Not only that, it's only gonna go, what, Johnny,
Yeah.
about that high, which you're gonna look right over the top of it.
Anyway, I'll throw it out there. We can talk about it perhaps during the, when we do our budget for next year. And that's a more correct place for it, I think. Yes, Matthew?
We can investigate some options. We can talk to the person who does most of our gardens, horticulturists, that sort of thing, just see what options might be out there, and then come back with kind of what the gambit of costs and whatnot would look like. But I think the conversation is certainly helpful, that you'd like something a little bit taller to block the view, but at the same time being cost effective and not maintenance heavy. So, yeah, so we'll kind of take that back, see if there are options. I'm not sure if there are, but, and we'll be happy to report back.
That's, I think we were just talking that too. I mean, everybody plants hostas because you don't have to look after them. They come up every year. There may be, Philip may know of some kind of a
Plant like that.
plant that grows up so high, drops down in the spring and then grows up again and you don't have to look after it. If that's the case, that would be ideal.
Okay.
Caitlin, I have a question about the digitalization of records. Now, is that something that would be applicable or help me with the historical side of stuff? So remember I said that, like, if somebody was to inquire about the history or whatever, because periodically, like, I'll check the website or whatever and just out of curiosity, but will that help me?
Yep, through your chair, it's basically an Excel spreadsheet that is ongoing, so
Okay.
anytime you can request that up to date, or I can send you a copy of
Okay.
that as well for you to work through.
Okay.
It contains all the names and the owners, the dates.
So even the owners of the plot?
Correct, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay,
ownership and burial records.
okay.
Insurance.
So that'll alleviate a lot of, Caitlin, what, yeah, okay.
We can definitely exchange information.
Yeah, okay, good. Because I haven't had anybody inquire like anything yet, but if they do, at least I know I can kind of say, okay, somebody's inquiring, so, okay, good, thanks.
All right. There's no action required on that one, except the report. So we can move forward to 7.2, the entrance sign. I have a recommendation that the Prescott Cemetery Board of Management direct staff to proceed with the ordering of the entrance sign at a cost of $101.70. I need a mover, please. Donald, seconder. Elaine, favor? Carried. Wondered.
Through your chair, we can pass that after session and carry that motion.
Yeah.
Nathan?
Right, through
don't-
your chair,
Yeah.
I will go over the report. So in June of 2023, the board had expressed a desire for a more welcoming and inviting sign. So staff went to a couple or three local sign companies for a metal sign. It would be similar to a street sign, except non-reflective. I didn't think there was really a need to be a reflective street sign type. We did ask for feedback from the board. Some feedback was provided, which I tried to capture. Some of it was regarding the title of the cemetery, because Sandy Hill and Prescott Cemetery are used interchangeably. So if there's any feedback, today would be a great day to receive that, and then we can work at installing the sign. Public Works would be doing the installation of the sign.
I think Sandy Hill has to be in there somewhere.
Yeah, well, I was always known it by Sandy Hill Cemetery. That's the old people, Sandy Hill Cemetery.
See, I have it on your card there. It says Sandy Hill. And then the second line is Prescott Cemetery, because there is a Sandy Hill Cemetery in Augusta, North Augusta. So just to clarify, because I know it kind of goes by both for the people in the community, but yeah.
Through you, Chair, that's a possibility too. There is a mock-up in your agenda package as well of the sign. We could do welcome to Sandy Hill with Prescott Cemetery below. Totally up for.
It's good the way you got it. Sandy Hill Cemetery, like, says is all I've ever known it as. And Prescott, Elaine mentions designated as this one, because I have a feeling across Ontario, there's a lot of Sandy Hill cemeteries. Easy digging.
Well, you got everything on that you need, that's for sure. Sandy Hill Cemetery, Prescott, and it's got all the information. And who the inquiries, who to get a hold of.
Do you recall how big it is?
It's 24 by 36,
Right.
2 by 3.
Yeah,
And it would go up to your chair, it would go on the existing pole.
Right.
And I would hope to remove some of the sign clutter that's there.
okay. All right, if there are no more questions, I've got to move it. I think I voted on it, didn't I? I jumped the gun a bit. All right. We can move to 7.3. And this with Matthew. All right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So, GFD Hoiston provides information and on their investment vehicles. So with a cemetery, and the regulations say that you have to put so many dollars aside per internment that you do for care and maintenance in the future. And the concept being is that if someone was to abandon the cemetery sometime in the future, that there would be care and maintenance to be able to carry on that. So at the end of 2022, there was 121,000 in a trust fund that is currently administered by the public trustee. One thing with the public trustee doing it is that they charge a lot of expenses that you wouldn't normally see on such a simple fund. So GFD is a private company or a not-for-profit that does this. Just put it into a high-interest savings account. And so it kind of runs in gambit. So what I was going to suggest is if committee would like to investigate different options, perhaps lower cost options that still produce a decent return for the trust fund, is that we could come back with what some other municipalities are doing, what that looks like in terms of cost and return, and see if you wish to change. One thing about the trust fund is that it has to be in a place where you can't draw on it, you can't, there's a whole bunch of regulations. It has to remain there in perpetuity, and in case of the closure of the cemetery itself. And so being linked to the town, obviously, it's a slightly different concept because we wouldn't allow it to, but any abandoned cemeteries that really this was invented and brought forward to address. And so many municipalities are dealing with abandoned cemeteries and having to maintain the upkeep, and it tends to be a very difficult situation. So really there's, I think we can get a better return on the investment, and some of those funds do come back on a regular basis, on a yearly basis to the cemetery. And I think that could be help promote the overall funding of the cemetery itself.
Makes sense to me. Me?
Yeah, Matthew, essentially what you're talking about is the same exploration of investment of funds that you did for the wastewater management board, and I think that's turned out to be very fruitful, so
There's a
I'd be fully in favor of you looking into it.
few more regulations around this particular one, that the bereavement authority has applied for or applied to it. But I think there's lots of opportunities out there to get a better return, so.
Any other questions? We don't have a motion with that one either, we're just staff direction. Other business before we adjourn?
I sent an email today. Oh, okay. I thought I sent it to everybody. Anyway, one of the things I wanted to sort of propose to the cemetery is with regards to corner posts, okay? Because you've sold stuff and then you kind of let me know or tell the clients, whatever, that they need cornerstones. So I'm working with a couple of cemeteries that, because in the past, we would do the corner post for the client, and then Fraser would install it. That was how things were in the past. So right now, because you guys are looking after it now and Fraser's no longer installing them, which was kind of like a complimentary thing to the client. What we're doing now is if I sell 4 cornerstones to a family, okay, I'm charging $400 for the 4 of them. If they purchase a monument at the same time, they get a discount. So in other words, the installation kind of becomes free because I only charge them technically $300 plus the installation of $100. So they could be paying $500, $400 to $500 for a set plus HST. So one of the things that I'm thinking of doing, which kind of guarantees to the cemetery that when you sell a plot, if you sell them the cornerstones right away at a discounted price. So for example, somebody buys Caitlin, your last name is Mallory, so you purchase a plot and you need 4 cornerstones with the letter M on it. So you buy the plot, whatever fees go to the BAO. You also sell cornerstones to that client. Then you become my client, okay, for 4 cornerstones. You get a discount of 200, like down to $250 for the 4. That's like our 2023 pricing. So 4 stones for $250. If you sell them to the client, for example, I'm just throwing it out there, for $450 installed, so one of us can do the installation, which is fairly simple, straightforward, but the cemetery is making money. You're ensuring, and this way you're guaranteed that every plot you sell moving forward is going to have those cornerstones, rather than the client going, yeah, I'll get them. Yeah, I'll get them. And it doesn't happen right away. So it might be a way to expedite and guarantee that the cemetery is getting new cornerstones moving forward, and it's easy peasy. You say, okay, boom, 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 this, $450, whatever it is to the client. In a sense, they're still saving a little bit of money, but it's being done immediately with you guys. So it's food for thought that if it's something that you want to do moving forward, it might be.
But it's not one of us installing these cornerstones, it's 2 of us, because Caitlin, who has done an excellent job this year as far as locating where things go and who's where, like Fraser used to, she would have to go out and mark exactly where they go for one of us to install. So there are 2 people involved here, not just one.
Yeah, so, and I mean, even now, like we'll order the cornerstones for the client, and then there's a couple of scenarios when we do the installation that they could be installed the same time a pad or a foundation is done. If not, he'll do it when he goes back to set the monuments onto the foundation. So there's a couple of things, and it does make it easier because in a sense that if I have a general idea as to where, any cemetery, any monument place, once the cornerstones are there, it's easier for us to locate it as well. You know, kind of X marks the spot as to where we're doing the foundations. You know, because Caitlin gives reference to like there was a couple that were sort of side by side. So it was very easy for us to kind of go and put them in. But there's always going to be two people, whether it's Caitlin and a monument company, because we still have to coordinate with, like Caitlin will have to go out and sort of mark it out, but sometimes the cornerstones aren't installed until months later. So, you know, because of yard maintenance, you know, I worry that they're going to be pulled out and put in the wrong spot again, whereas this might be expedited to ensure accuracy and stuff as well. So putting it out there for, like I said, a way for the cemetery to make money and or to expedite it and ensure that cornerstones are being purchased for each plot.
Try through you, Chair. I think previously the cornerstones were, so that cost, we were charging for that and then going through you. So I don't think the cemetery was, especially if Fraser was doing it in kind, I don't think we were making a profit off of that. There's definitely potential to perhaps do that. I have not had any requests for cornerstones. I send them your way to have, you know, to have them properly installed and placed. And they are supposed to have the cornerstones in before a burial actually takes place. 90% of the time, that is not the case. So that's where we're kind of running into discrepancies or issues, but it's something we can definitely have a look at, and we would have to work out some logistics on what that would look like and how we would coordinate together.
Yeah. And it could be that, say, for example, I wouldn't get Caitlin to go out and do the locate, like she would know which plot she sold. Okay, so you sell a plot, you have all the details. So then you say to me, okay, client, we're ordering 4 flat markers with the letter M on it. Then you place the order. Once I've got them, then you can actually do the locate, and the person that's going to be, person or persons that's doing the installation for the cemetery does them right away. So you really shorten that locate time, as well as they're ensured that they're going to get done. Whereas you tell the client, you have to get the cornerstones, and then they go off shopping and then they forget about it and they don't do it. So, and then come time, oh, there's a burial, the cornerstones still aren't there. And it's not an overnight process from the time that they're ordered. Working with the cemetery, I wouldn't have to even work on sketches with you guys. What I would do is you send me an email, say, I just sold a plot to so-and-so, here's the location. We need 4 cornerstones with the letter M on it. That's kind of an approval, because cornerstones are pretty straightforward. So I have a whole slew of them now that I'm trying to expedite or shorten the wait period for clients. So I think it can be sort of done and manufactured quicker than the process working with the client. And you guys aren't making money. We're making money with the installation as well, but it's a very timely from start to finish. And it's not guaranteed that the cornerstones will be done when you do sell the plot. Whereas this way, we're doing the Sandy Hill Prescott Cemetery as the client in reference to the purchaser of that plot. And then you mark it up so the cemetery is making money, and then the installation is in lieu between the board members, and they are easy to install, so. It's food for thought.
Okay, Matthew?
So there's a number of things that I think we've discussed this evening, including this, where we can reach out to other cemeteries, find out exactly how they're doing things, that sort of thing, and then come back with recommendations. Because I think We also talked about perhaps reviewing the bylaw and making some changes there and talking about the pet, that sort of thing. So certainly there's some things that we can look into further and bring back some options.
Okay, good.
Can I ask Elaine a question that
Sure.
just kind of, when we're talking about installations here, it occurred to me, this gentleman that was here was talking about rather than digging down 4 feet, putting a base in for a stone, about using the type things, I guess is what he was referring to.
They're square and they got a auger system on it. He just augers them down into the ground and set them up as posts. I guess the cement or the stone would sit on top of it. There'd be some sort of thing to set them on it.
Yeah, I'm not sure, because I know that, I haven't heard of the name of that one, that particular one that he's making reference to. So that's something I can reach out to him about to find out. I was at the Ontario Monument Builders Association annual seminar meeting last November. It's actually taking place again this coming weekend. And there's a company that uses a grid system that is fairly new, and it's almost like a floating foundation on it rather than digging down 4.5 feet. And sometimes the floating foundations, from what it's been explained to me, sometimes they can be a little easier to re-level. Because once you've got and some of the old foundations that are done, I've seen Tom pull some out and they're like in a V shape, so over time, and of course, you might have root systems that affect what's going on underground, and of course frost. So some of this new stuff, because the like any industry, it's always evolving and changing and stuff, but there is another system that kind of laid out without having to go 4.5 feet deep. So it can make, for even a full upright monument, it might make things a little bit easier moving forward in the future. So that's something that I'm still learning about. We don't do it, but I've talked to Tom about it and said, hey, these are really interesting, more and more. It seems that a lot of the cemeteries in the States are using them. Or monument companies, but I'm not sure what or who is using them here in Ontario. So it's another research project kind of thing.
There'd be a lot in the States that don't have to worry about frost in the ground.
Well, and some of the social media sites that I follow, a lot of them do have frost, and they make reference to it. So it'll be a little interesting to get more information from the company. And I do have some stuff, but I could reach out to find out more about it, because it might eliminate. And with Sandy Hill, we all know what it's like when you're digging a hole. And especially if there's been a fresh recent burial, it does pose a problem of the loose sand here filling in the hole as we're digging. So, it may be a way to overcome some stuff in the future, but I'll look into that for you if you want.
Yeah, I think it might be something we should be interested in.
Okay.
'Cause I know we do have a lot of tombstones that are one way or the other, and they don't have to be a real old tombstone. Some of the oldest ones are the ones that are the straightest. Looking to see what is the most stable for the modern times, I guess.
Yeah, and we've seen some yeah, and it all depends, because like Tom's gone in, he's pulled out an old foundation and not knowing what's under there, and the root system just wreaks havoc in some cases. So, and it might be a tree might not even be beside the monument, it's like over there, but the root system again. So
Have we got a date for the next meeting, or we're gonna wait until you call us?
Maybe in the new year?
Okay. Good. I have a recommendation that the meeting be adjourned. The time is 4:58. Need a mover and a seconder, please. Donald? And Elaine, and all in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.